Welcome to Testing in the Pub.
Hi, and welcome back to Testing in the Pub, or today, actually testing in the pub garden. We're outside. We're talking to Tony Bruce. Talk to Tony. Primarily, we're going to talk about communities.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Tony. Thanks very much for taking part in this.
Oh, thanks for asking me along.
No problem at all.
So, let's start with an intro of who you are, a bit about your background. What do you do?
Okay, so my name's Tony Bruce. I'm a director of Tony Bruce Consulting. I do a little bit of consulting, a little bit of contracting, and I like to take part in the testing community.
Awesome. Where are you currently consulting?
I'm currently consulting with a company called Equal Experts, based on a client site in Paddington.
What made you get into consulting then? What drives you in that direction?
I think for me it was just a natural progression, really. It just kind of happened. Same with how people generally fall into testing, I think. And for a lot of people, it just morphs into consulting at some point. It seemed like a natural progression to me, and it just kind of happened.
Cool. So you were somewhere and you were permanent. And
Yeah.
then,
So
and
I
then
did the natural thing of permie contracting, and then kind of half contracting, half consultant. So I wouldn't call myself a full-out consultant.
What do you find the main differences are between the contracting work you do and the consulting work?
There's a difference between kind of going in there and doing the work, and going in there and helping people do the work and improving things and changing things. But it depends on the client itself. So sometimes you do find yourself mixing it together, and you end up doing some of the work as well as trying to improve things at the same time, which it can make it difficult. That wouldn't be my preferred method.
So with the consultant side of things, it's kind of like a coach?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Cool. So let's talk about communities, because you are the host of the London Tesla Gathering. But how did that all start? How did you get started in the community?
So a couple of years ago, Michael Bolton and James Lindsay happened to be running courses on the same period, or the same week, and the course ending coincided on a day, and they actually decided to meet up afterwards and bring all the people that were in the classes together. And I didn't go to either of the classes, but I went to the pub, and I thought this actually works quite well. And I was talking to a guy called Mahinda, I can't pronounce his surname properly, apologies, Mahinda Kozla, I think it's pronounced.
Yep.
And we kind of thought, well, this is good, let's keep this going. So we tried for a few times, and we got generally about 5 people. And then I stopped because I got busy. Mahinda stopped as well, I can't remember the reason why, I think he got busy as well. And I decided to start it back up again. And then after that, we had 5, and then it's grown to now, whatever it is, 70 people.
Yeah, it's normally a very decent turnout, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, people kind of thought, well, testers aren't going to get together. And true at first, but it took a bit of time, and yeah, we've got quite a good crowd now. And there's always new faces, which always surprises me after whatever is 3 years of running it. Always like at least 10 new faces.
Yeah, and that's always the great thing, isn't it? It keeps the community vibrant. Is there anything you do to kind of promote that, or is it just that sometimes people bring their mates?
Yeah, it's kind of word of mouth, and then Twitter, and then just posting it on LinkedIn groups, and making an entry into the Software Testing Club or a few other forums.
Yeah.
So how do you keep it fresh though at the London Tesla Gathering events?
I've not actually changed the format in a few years. We've moved pubs because as we grew bigger and bigger, we needed a bigger space. But the format itself has always just been 2 talks, generally short talks, 10 to 15 minutes, and then Q&A time, and then generally we just chit-chat for the next few hours.
Yeah.
That's I don't know if it's kept fresh, but it works. So I've not tried to keep it fresh, I've just gone with what works, really.
And I guess the next question, you spoke a little bit there about advertising, where you push it on Twitter, and you've got the meetup.com thing going as well.
I think word of mouth is still a huge thing. I think we possibly forget that when we try and market stuff, how big word of mouth still is.
Yeah, but how would you entice more people, because there's a lot more than 70 testers in London, right? And there's a lot of people that might know about it, but might.
I mean, there is a limit I can actually fit into the room, so I'm quite comfortable to where it is at the moment. We have had nights where it's been packed and people have to stood out in the hallway, which is not the best. But as enticing, it's actually just word of mouth. So someone who's been will start a new job, or just bring some workmates along, and it progresses that way. The sponsors spread the word as well. Anyone talking will then spread the word afterwards or beforehand as well, to bring some of their mates along to see them.
Yeah, I'm always trying to encourage people, and I know you are as well, Steve, to to come along to the LTG?
It is hard, I think, initially to convince someone that it's enjoyable. But once they've been to one, they're generally back for a couple more.
Yeah,
It's about getting that critical mass, isn't it? 'Cause
Yeah.
there's a couple of other meetups that I go to, or I have been to in the past. There's one down in Guildford in Surrey.
Yeah.
And we tend to get the same sort of 12 or 13 people. And
Yeah.
it just don't seem to have found whatever the spark is to kind of get it to mates tell mates. Because there's enough. I think there's enough tech companies around there. And there's another one that I used to go to, which is sadly doesn't exist anymore in Reading. And that kind of never, there was always, again, it was the same sort of 10 or 15 people. It never really got kind of big enough to establish a critical mass.
Well, I mean, you can pick that up.
Yeah, I guess it's a matter of, did you just literally, there were 5 people, there were 10 people, and then it just happened?
Yeah, it just kind of grew.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. I guess the advantage of London.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it does help a lot, obviously, being in the middle of London.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to get people there, and especially, it is quite a heavy, well, some aspects of it's quite a heavy after-work drink. So that helps as well.
Yeah, I guess location.
Yeah.
Location especially important. Well, one day maybe we get you to drag it temporarily over to West London.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, one of the first ones was in a Grosvenor, how do you pronounce it? Grosvenor Casino. That didn't work so well because I didn't realise at the time that we were in the middle of the spot where everyone eats their dinner.
Right.
So we had a couple of talkers trying to talk as people around us are trying to eat. So,
yeah.
So yeah, we moved from there, and we've been through a few different pubs.
Yeah.
It is hard to find a decent area in a pub.
Yeah.
So I think the one we're in now is pretty good.
Yeah, I like it there. Gets a little bit warm sometimes in the summer.
Yeah, that's just because we need to remind them to turn the air conditioning on.
Turn it right up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, certainly, I think it might help with the LTG because there isn't really another tester-specific meetup in London. I know that there's other meetups.
There are.
Like there's an agile one.
There's quite a few. There's quite a few. I mean, a lot of them are sort of developer and test focused as well.
Oh, right, okay.
But there are a bunch. There's no one that, I mean, I've just gone with testing for this. Whether you're a developer in test or whatever you classify yourself as, you get something out of it. I mean, you two have been to loads. What value do you get out of it?
It's kind of broad appeal. I think that's kind of the thing. The value's mostly in meeting other people, and I kind of hesitate to say networking opportunities because that kind of implies that I go there with some sort of plan.
Yeah.
It's just meeting up with whoever's there, having a drink, having a bit of a chat about stuff, finding
sharing
out
war
about
stories.
things.
For me,
exactly.
It is. It's all about the learning, and it's learning from other people's experiences, what you've not experienced, you know, so that you can then take those ideas back and gain those experiences yourself, and sharing your own as well, so that other people can learn from you as well.
So, for example, you, Dan, I remember you being the only tester in the company for a while,
and
not having anyone to talk to, and then you came along, and you found probably other people in the same position.
Exactly, and it was sharing those experiences, and because I couldn't learn anything being the only tester from anyone in the organisation, I had to look externally and get involved more in the community, you know. So yeah, it's definitely very appealing, but I think partly one of the problems is that if you haven't experienced it yet, you don't know that appeal, you know. It's like,
and maybe that's where that word of mouth thing comes in, because it can be. I remember the first time I went to a tester meetup, it wasn't the LTG. The first one I ever went to was actually one in Guildford, and it was quite intimidating, simply because I wasn't kind of used to just turning up and going, "Hi, I'm Steve. Let's talk about testing," or anything, and I kind of introducing myself. That's a skill I think you kind of learn. That's
part of the reason I try and avoid. I know we've had this talk before about getting into your offices and doing one there. That's why I try avoid, even no matter how cool your offices are, I try avoid being in an office just to get out, because you are not exactly a different person, but you feel more relaxed outside the office.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah,
it's a bit like the WASP ones. That's why I like going to the WASP ones, because you learn a lot about web apps.
So you're always in someone's corporate room.
And it's always kind of like a sales pitch from that company, or a recruitment drive or something like that from the company. So it's kind of it doesn't have that pub.
I mean, to be fair, we do that at the tester gathering as well, but they get sort of 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's more restricted, and everybody's got equal opportunities there for pitching. If we're looking for someone, we'll say the LTG, but it's the same as every company would, you know.
Yeah.
But you touched on internal communities there, holding it in the offices, but do you encourage that as part of your consulting that you do? Do you encourage internal?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that surprises me is when I go into a company, how little time the teams spend together. So, for example, just something as simple as organising lunch, where we're all eating together at some point. For whatever reason, people kind of don't. Well, I found in my experience, a lot of places don't do that, which was odd to me. But and then that follows on. So, for example, right now a few months ago, I started brown bags, which wasn't something that they were doing, or not in my time anyway.
I like a brown bag session.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, we run those internally as well. We don't get a massive amount of people attending.
That's fine. That's not the point.
But I suppose it's one of those things. It's quite easy to get to expect too much too soon.
Yeah, exactly. And people will go to the topics that interest them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's worth doing, even if you get 3-4 people. I think it's still worth doing.
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's lunchtime learning. It's like people might not want to give up the lunchtime, but it's all about value there as well. Like, you're getting to learn something. So if that's something's important to you, then you're going to give up your lunch break so you can learn about it.
Yeah, and anything like that has to be voluntary, and it has to be something that people could go to.
It has
as
to
soon as you
evolve.
start incentivizing it or anything like that, then you're off on the wrong foot, I think. I mean, fair enough, but maybe occasionally bring some beers. But...
Yeah, I mean, I would like to bring in some sandwiches or something along those lines. But yeah, I think it has to grow organically. It has to evolve.
That's some influence tricks there. You guys with your beer and sandwiches.
Absolutely.
Well, I like beer as well, so yeah.
We mentioned the breaking bread thing as well, didn't we? So
yeah, that's the same. It's like, it doesn't have to be a lunchtime learning session or a brown bag. It can be going for lunch. It's still that sort of, maybe less of a community feel, but it's still getting the team together to talk about stuff that isn't necessarily work related, but is industry related as well. You know.
Yeah. I mean, we thinking about it, we just started a few months ago. We just started happening to go for lunch, go for coffees at the same time. Yeah. So the group of us would go get coffee and have a chat, and it just grew.
That's cool. So this kind of leads nicely into teamwork. Now you've been performing your talk, Be a Real Team Member. Is that where you got your inspiration for that talk from? Is from the internal communities?
I would like to answer that, but I have no idea actually. It just seemed like a good idea, a good topic at the time. It just seemed like sometimes you can go into a team and it seems that the team's not quite gelled yet, right? Whether it's a new team or whatever's happened, or new members in the team, and there's things that you can do to help that along. And it just seemed like a good idea to do a bit of research on that, and how to get the team kind of talking together. I mean, I've been on client sites where people are sitting as close as you two are now, which is like less than a meter, and they don't talk to each other, which seemed weird to me. So it just, and you can help improve that.
Okay, so from your experience and from your talk, what does it take to be a good team member?
Oh, look it up online. It's available. No, it's. I think it's just a bit of effort, and maybe. I mean, for me, it was a bit of research and saying, you know what, a lot of these guys who've done research into the teams are right. We generally fall into a kind of a role, and sometimes you can identify that there is a role missing. So you can either fill that role or suggest that we find someone that will fill that role, and just communicate. So it all comes down to communication. We've got so many forms of communication, but we get it so wrong. It's amazing. We're terrible at communicating.
So
so it's just getting people talking to each other a bit more as well.
Cool. What's the most difficult situation with a teamwork that you've actually seen as part of you consulting in companies?
There's a lot of times there's history to it, which obviously you won't be aware of. So you can either try and find out what it was or just ignore it. So that there'll be reasons why the team don't actually talk to each other, for example, and you won't be aware of them if you're coming into a new team, or there'll be reasons why everyone doesn't go out to lunch or do things together. I have found that generally that kind of thing happens outside of London. In London, there's obviously just so many people that we've always get a new team together and so on and so on. So outside of London, you could get people that have worked together for 20 years or 10 years or 15 years, and for whatever reason, past history-wise, something's gone on, and they may not gel together anymore. That can be a little bit difficult to get over. I think it's doable. It does take a lot on their parts, obviously. There's not only so much you can do. They have to be willing to go for it, and just let things smooth over. Whatever's happened in the past is in the past. Move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of playing that company politics as well, isn't
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, I could go into some stories, but I'm not going to, obviously. But not while the mic is on, anyway. But yeah, I think there's different things that can affect why a team's not quite gelling. Part of it can be personality clashes. Part of it can be politics. Part of it can be history. It's working your way around that.
Okay, that's cool. So, should we move on to the quickfire round?
Let's go for the quickfire
Since it
round.
worked so
Okay.
well with Dan Billing,
Absolutely.
we've got a quickfire round where
Go
there's
for it.
5 questions. Have you got your timer, Steve?
I have not got my timer, Dan. Let's.
All right. What quick fire times round
So
as well?
essentially, there's 30 seconds to answer each question.
Okay.
If it goes above 30 seconds, then
we're just gonna
we'll just ask you the next question.
Cut you
Okay.
off. So, ready? We don't have the countdown timer yet,
Okay.
so there's just a
You
bit
should
of
do.
lame beep.
We do.
No,
Right.
you do. I can see it from here. Yeah.
No, I mean the TV show, the
Oh,
countdown
right.
timer.
Yeah,
The music, the theme music.
Okay.
Bong. And I'm
That'll
not going
work.
to. And I'm
Just
not
do
going to do that
that.
again.
Oh,
So,
Don't
Right.
worry, Steve, we'll just edit this. So.
thanks, Dan.
Okay, so question number 1. What's the best conference that you've spoken at?
That's a difficult thing to answer. I don't think there is an answer. There's conferences that are good for different reasons. So, for example, there are some that are really built around networking. There are some that are built around straightforward just talks. You know what? I'll be diplomatic. Anyone that I've ever organised myself is the best conference I've ever taught.
Good answer.
You can't like your own conference.
Yeah.
What conference can you like? Come on.
Okay, right. So, right, that's the 30 seconds up on that. Anyway, next question is, what is the thing that you feel most proud about in testing?
I think it's the community itself. It's great. There are cases where there's someone doing some kind of charity event. We've all chipped in to help with that, or someone, for example, trying to get to Let's Test. A lot of people chipped in for that. There's also, say, the first ever tester gathering workshops that I ran was for free. People gave up their own time, 2 days of time basically, for free to come along and learn and teach each other, which I thought was fantastic.
Nice one. That's pretty cool. So, next question. Who do you respect most in the testing world and why?
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to answer that. I'm not going to alienate anyone.
It's worth a try.
I think
it's a
that
difficult one,
basically
isn't
I
it?
learn from something from everyone I talk to. So everybody in the community that I've ever talked to and have not talked to.
That's exactly the same answer that Dan Billing gave, I think, to
Well,
approximately the same question.
You know what? We all
Which is
get
fine.
around. We get around.
Yeah.
We talk to people all over the world, and we learn something from everyone. So, why would I want to pick one person? There isn't
Right.
one
It's
person.
a very good point.
Yeah, there's lots of people.
Absolutely
that's
fair
cool.
point.
Okay. What is your favourite testing book and testing blog?
I think there's far too many good ones out there, and bad ones actually, to mention a favourite. I think you get something a little bit from everything. So every blog post you read, you'll get something a little bit out of. Same as books. Even the books that some of us call traditional or old-fashioned, you'll still get some useful information out of them. So they're worth reading. I think one of the bad things actually is having a favourite or a best. I think that encourages people to read less. If you say this one book is amazing, that's what everyone's going to go and read. They need to widen their range, I think.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's a very good point. I think we see that increasingly in software testing as well. It's not just people reading about and presenting and talking about software testing. Social science, for example,
Mhm.
how that's kind of permeated thinking within software testing.
Yeah,
I think that's
so-
great. It's kind of almost like software testing's at the centre, but there's so many kind
Exactly.
of branches.
So a good example would be Alan Richardson's talk about, I didn't want to mention names, but I'm going to because he talked about this particular subject. I've forgotten the name of the talk though. I think it's Outside Influences on Testing. He spoke about that at Eurostar. I'm pretty sure it's available online as well, actually. So if you've ever talked to Alan Richardson, you know he has a huge amount of influences, so it's worth checking out.
Nice.
Mm.
Okay, next question. What's the next big thing for our industry? What will we be talking about next?
I don't think there is one. I think it's individual. It's more about what's the next big thing for you. There's always going to be a market for what you have to offer. So I don't really care what's happening in the industry, to be honest. I care about myself and what's going to be the next interesting thing for me and the next big thing for me. And I think that's a better way to look at it because it's going to be contextual for everyone, right? So there isn't going to be one next big thing.
That's
So
an
you have to
interesting
decide
answer.
what's the next big thing for you.
Yeah. Good answer. Okay. We've got one last question, which is what's next for you? What
Okay.
have you got coming up?
So next week I'll be at CAST. I'm running a workshop around questions, or the effectiveness of questions. Then there's October. There is the Tester Gathering London workshops, which are being held with Skills Matter, so look that up. Then I'm also at Agile Testing Days, where we'll be running a Black Ops testing workshop. Then in January we'll be running a Black Ops testing workshop as well. Was that done?
No, it's right.
We'll
just
give
turned it
more
off.
time
Okay.
because this is a good question.
Yeah, so in January we'll be holding a public Black Ops testing workshop, which should be good. I'll be doing Agile Tour London in October. And next week at CAST I'll also be recording a podcast with Software Test Professionals Radio, which should be a lot of fun. I've not done one of them before.
Excellent.
Up now.
No, one of those ones, one of them. Yeah.
Maybe it'll be even more
Yeah.
professional than this one. Who knows?
Or Mark Thompson's a musician, so I imagine he's got loads of recording kit.
He has a lot of kit.
Yeah.
I've had a few chats with him about their setup to see what we could learn, and yeah, he's got a heck of a lot of stuff. Cool.
Mixing desks is what he was suggesting.
He has, yeah, all manner of shit. He's even got a proper microphone. It's like, it's mental.
That's crazy.
Steve, we've got a good microphone.
Cool,
Okay.
excellent. Well, thank you so much for
Thanks
that,
asking me
Tony.
along.
It was really, really good to hear all of that, and we will be back very soon with another podcast from Testing in the Pub.
Well, pleasure to be here. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks, Sonny.